The fire alarm in 7B chirps once, then finds its voice. Red diodes wake in sequence down the corridor. A body-worn camera blinks the hallway into view. Gray air, a stainless door frame, a glass case with a folded evacuation map. The lens catches the digital face of a wall thermostat as an officer passes. The screen shows a recent touch. Target temperature, higher than night settings. Event stamp, 1:39 a.m. In the lobby, a night concierge with a wool cap points at the elevator camera feed. Alarm hits on the 8th, he says. Then 7, you can smell it. Not a big one, I think. Outside, the air is cold enough to keep breath visible. A neighbor on the sidewalk calls 911 a second time and repeats her first sentence softer. It smells like something electrical. Engine 12 arrives without sirens and sets a short ladder to a balcony that faces the alley. Another unit checks the stairwell door, wedges it, and holds. The body cam sees a light smear along the baseboard dull in the low light. A firefighter kneels, holds a meter, and says, "Hydrocarbon without drama." They pulled 2 cans and a canvas bag from a closet and set them in the hall. The bag holds folded drop cloths and a half-empty bottle of solvent. The solvent lid is loose. In 7B, the kitchen is dark with a low haze. The window over the sink fogs and clears and cycles, the glass cooler than the room. On the counter, a space heater sits aimed at a cardboard box with winter boots. The heater's coil glows dull. A fire captain kills the plug, lifts the cord, and feels heat in the insulation near the base. He sets it on the tile and says, "This didn't catch. It tried." He points at the baseboard where soot licks would have been if the flame found air. They never formed. The room smells like something that wants to be a story and isn't. The occupant, Dana, waits in slippers in the stairwell. She is a doctor in residency and keeps odd hours. "I woke up because the thermostat clicked," she says to the first officer who asks. "It never does that at night." She points at her phone. The app shows a manual bump. She did not touch it. She lives alone. On the alley, Truck 5 checks the exterior electric closet. It is cool to the touch. A lineman from the power company parks a small van and unspools a laptop. Interval data, 1-minute strips from a smart meter showing power draw, for the building flows in 1-minute strips. At minutes later, aggregate draw spikes and falls in a single minute, then returns to baseline. Lights do not do that. Compressors or pumps do, when they are forced and then stopped. Very often the spike is a byproduct of something else. The building manager, Trevor, arrives in sweatpants and a jacket half-zipped. He has keys and a clipboard that still smells like new plastic. He frowns at the presence of a space heater on Dana's counter, as if that is the story. "These are not permitted," he says to no one in particular. The captain nods without agreeing. Detectives Torres and Eng take the scene at around 3. They move without hurry. Torres photographs the thermostat faceplate and asks Dana for consent to pull a vendor log. The manufacturer records local screen touches versus scheduled changes. She agrees. Eng walks the corridor with a small flashlight and notes 2 tiny, fresh scrapes on the latch plate of 7B. The door shows no forced entry. The deadbolt is retracted. In the security office, the concierge scrubs the elevator feed back to midnight. The camera sees people carrying takeout. A man with a plant. A woman with a white dog that refuses to step on tile. At 1:16 a.m., a person in a hood steps in from the garage, keeps their head down, and rides to 7. No fob is shown. The elevator is unlocked overnight. The camera records an exit on 7, then nothing for 6 minutes, then an entry at the same landing. The person rides back down to the garage and out of frame. In the garage, a dome camera watches a concrete ramp and nothing else. A second camera faces the gate. At 1:14 a.m., a bashed sedan noses in behind an authorized vehicle and tailgates the gate before it closes. The plate is crooked. It reads clean on one character and mud on the rest. The car sits in a visitor spot for 7 minutes. The driver wears a hood. Torres asks Dana who has keys. The landlord, she says. Building management, I think. Me. My ex, briefly, when he moved a bookcase. She pauses and adds, I took his copy back. Trevor says the building keeps Grandmaster keys in a coded lockbox. He touches it as he speaks, the way people touch things they want you to see. The box is intact. The log doesn't show an open at night. At a convenience store 3 blocks away, a manager prints a POS report. Server time syncs to network. Receipt printers can drift a few minutes. That shows a sale of nitrile gloves and lighter cubes at minutes before 1. The receipt's thermal clock shows just after 1. The server time shows 5 minutes earlier. The clerk shrugs at the mismatch and says the printer lags when it rains. The camera shows a man in a hood tap the reader with a card and check his phone. He buys no lighter fluid. He buys things that look like a plan without a plan. A forensic tech powders the thermostat faceplate and lifts one latent that reads like a partial. Dana's living prints are clean. The latent rides above them like a careful touch. The vendor returns a snippet. At 1:39 a.m., the thermostat took a manual input. It was not a scheduled change, and it was not the eco mode. A finger touched the glass. The vendor logs do not capture who. They capture that. Torres listens to the hallway alarm panel. It speaks in time codes. 1:41 a.m., smoke on 8. 1:42, 7, 1:45, reset, 1:54, alarm silenced. He writes the times on a legal pad and draws a line between the 139 bump and the 141 spike on the power meter. He leaves the line unlabeled. At around 7, the condo board president arrives with a folder of insurance documents. This building carries a master policy that covers structure, sprinklers, and common elements. Owners carry HO6 policies for interiors and personal property. When a covered loss strikes a covered place, both policies respond. It is not unusual for money to flow from 2 sources if paperwork aligns. We have had 2 claims this year, the president says, a leak on 3 that ruined hardwood, and now this. He is careful with adjectives. He says ruined once and loss 3 times. By noon, the detective's map has anchors. Garage entry at 1:14 tailgated, elevator up to 7 at 1:16, thermostat input at 1:39, building draw spike at 1:40, alarm at 1:41, elevator down at 1:22, uncorrected time needs alignment, convenience POS earlier with server correction. The lines want to meet. They do so without force when the clocks agree. Ung visits 7F, directly above Dana. A scent lingers in the stairwell, citrus cleaner and something sweet that shouldn't be sweet. The occupant is out. The door carries a clean strike plate and 2 small flakes of paint on the carpet nearby. He photographs the flakes and bags them. The super walks the hall and says the unit is vacant. Owners between tenants, he says, was going to show it next week. Vacant apartments gather stories that belong to other rooms. The building keeps a smart lock, stores local touch logs and pairs via Bluetooth to a manager device on vacant units that records local touches. It pairs to a manager's phone via Bluetooth. The log shows a door unlock at within that window, then a relock at 1:21. Trevor frowns when he sees the times and says his phone is at home in a dish near the entry. He holds it up to prove the battery is low. The log does not care where the phone is now. It cares that a device with the correct key talked to the lock then. Insurance adjusters begin their routine. One walks the space with a clipboard and says, "Contents and improvements and betterments to the air." Dana's H06 will cover her couch and her rugs and the heater that nearly made a different night. The master policy may carry a deductible that the board will assign back to the unit if fault is found. If fault is not found, the master pays and owners recapitalize later. The word subrogation appears on paper early and often. It is a word that is only interesting to people looking for money and to those who are owed it. Torres looks at claims history. He sees that 7F's owner filed a water loss claim in February for a burst angle stop under the bathroom sink. The check issued to the owner and the board named payees, and a figure that would make one person grateful and another person ambitious. The owner was between tenants and billed for storage and hotel nights he did not use. The adjuster reduced the claim. Emails in the file read tight and short. Someone felt mailed, and someone else felt defrauded. The someone who felt mailed uses an email domain that appears again on the building's board roster, the president's property company. The world is small when people own units. They ask for the owner's phone. He lives out of state, says he is here on business, and does not consent. His name is Evan. He has been a board president for 2 terms and is stepping down. He asks whether the cameras caught anything. Torres tells him they are still gathering. Evan nods the way people nod when they need a timeline and not an answer. The elevator feed shows a hooded figure carrying a canvas bag at 1:16. The bag bumps a knee on the way out at 7. The figure turns left, not right, toward the vacant 7F. 3 minutes later, the figure emerges without the bag. At 11:22, the same figure steps back into the elevator and rides down. The garage camera shows a bashed sedan nose out after tailgating its way in. The license frame reads the name of a mid-range car lot that sells as-is cars for cash. The lot opens at 9. Ung visits the lot. A service writer says a customer named Evan brought in a car for smog and underbody rattle last week. The car is not on site now. The invoice shows a plate. It is 1 digit off from the hooded figure's car when the mud is ignored. The service writer points without prompting at 2 vans in the lot with the property company's logo. He smiles and says, "They use our wash." The thermostat vendor returns a longer log for Dana's unit and a system audit for the building's shared heaters. The audit shows that the building's controller never asked 7B to rise at night. Only the local screen did. The vendor's language is careful. Manual touch, not schedule. Local input, not remote. Torres draws a small circle around 139 and writes, "Finger." A grocery store south of the freeway returns receipts for the last week for a loyalty account tied to Evan's email. The account bought painter's tape, drop cloths, and a plug-in heater 2 days before. It also bought solvent on sale. The camera sees a man with a hood that does not fit and a mask under his chin, like a relic of last year's rule. He moves with a stiffness that reads as someone wearing a different body on purpose. At fire investigation, a detective named Myers spreads photos on a table. The heater, the cardboard, the solvent, the thermostat face, the door latch scrapes, the 7F smart lock log. He speaks like a man who has seen real flame patterns and things that are not patterns at all. "This is staged low risk," he says. Looks like electrical, smells like lazy. Nothing caught because the air never found the line. He points at the solvent. If he wanted fire, he wouldn't set the bottle there. He wants a claim that reads near miss and a bill to the master for smoke and cleanup. He touches the thermostat photo. He bumps it to show overheat and then leaves a heater that shouldn't be there. It's messy theater. Insurance calls the building manager to ask for a documented list of contractors for cleanup. Evan emails the board with a suggestion. Use our approved vendor to streamline. Torres adds the email to the file. He writes, paid twice in the margin. A master claim paid to a company controlled by a board officer after a staged event would be money flowing in two directions toward one pocket. It would also be simple to explain once the number settled on a page. Torres and Eng serve a warrant on 7F. They look for residue where the drop cloth bag lay. They find a rectangle of lighter dust and a trace of solvent under a baseboard lip. They swab. They leave the heater in 7B bagged. In 7F's bathroom vanity, they find an empty blister pack for gloves and a torn-off receipt corner. The truncated digits match the convenience store's transaction number minus the lag. The timestamps pull each other into alignment. They invite Evan for a recorded interview. He brings counsel and sits with his thumbs linked. Ung keeps the question small. Do you own a sedan with plate ending 6GX? I rent frequently, Evan says. My companies have fleet vehicles. Were you in the building last night? I live here, he says, then corrects. I have a unit here. Did you enter 7F it within that window? I enter many units, he says. I am on the board. Did you touch Dana's thermostat? He smiles without teeth. You think I'm a handyman? Did you purchase solvent and a plug-in heater this week? Everyone buys heaters, it's winter. Why is there one in 7B where they are not permitted? That's a management issue, he says. Take it up with Trevor. Do you have a relationship with the cleanup vendor you recommended? We use them, he says. They do good work. Do you receive payment from them? I run companies. I receive many payments. He denies everything and admits nothing. The camera blinks in a slow, indifferent way. The power company sends a corrected interval strip for the building and a unit-level snapshot from a submitter project that is in pilot. Dana's unit participates. At 1:39, her unit's draw swings up in a small arc and then down, like a heater pulled and only briefly on. The building's main shows a steeper spike and drop, like a large motor. The elevator load would show like that, the garage gate also, and a short run from the fire pump if pressure falls. The elevator shows a ride to 7 at 1:16 and back at 1:22. The gate shows open at 1:14 and 1:22. The pump shows a short wake at 1:41 that the captain says could be a test in the building's sequence, or it could be the system breathing when an alarm resets. None of it contradicts the simple line that says a person came up, touched a screen, staged a room, and left. A neighbor in 7D sends a doorbell cam-style clip from his peephole camera, a fisheye lens that captures shape more than face. It watches the corridor in a fisheye ellipse. At 1:19, a hand reaches past his door, palm down, moving as if placing something on the floor outside 7F. The angle hides what? The hand wears a glove with a blue cuff. The convenience store sells a glove with the same blue. The camera lacks sound. It does not need it. Torres calls the elevator maintenance vendor and asks for key switch logs. The cabinet in the lobby records when the fire service switch, a panel mode that can hold and manually control the car, is turned. The log shows on at 1:12 for a minute, then off. The concierge says he did not touch it. Trevor says he did not. Evan has a key to everything. The switch would hold the elevator at the floor and allow manual control. The camera did not show that behavior. The log says it flickered. A borrowed key tried a trick and lost nerve, like the heater that missed its moment. Insurance adjusters return with clipboards and tablets. They ask Trevor to sign a work authorization for the cleanup vendor Evan recommends. He signs and dates the paper. Torres asks him to add a second vendor to the list for bids. Trevor says that will slow things down. Evan emails again. Time is of the essence with smoke. The board president pushes and the manager leans, and the line on a paper moves toward a familiar company where money will move again. Digital forensics pulls data from Dana's thermostat vendor. The touch at 139 carries a capacitor charge profile that is slightly different from the way Dana's finger usually registers. The vendor writes that gloves, styluses, and different skin capacitance can all produce different profiles. They cannot say who. They can say unlike owner usual. Torres circles it and writes glove. The convenience store clerk texts a detective a photo. Your guy came back for coffee, he writes. The photo shows Evan at the counter at noon. He wears a jacket with the property company's logo. He buys nothing with a hood now. He looks at the lottery case while he waits for his card to run. Torres thanks the clerk and prints the image. The story does not become truer because a man buys coffee. It becomes easier to tell because people recognize faces under lights. They execute a search on Evan's office under a warrant that lists fraud, insurance tampering, and trespass. In a bottom drawer, they find a packet of building master keys under a folder marked Showings. The 7F key sits there. A small smart lock programmer hides in a pencil cup. A vendor app on Evan's phone shows recent pairings in the last 24 hours. Counsel says the keys are for work and the pairings are routine. The judge will read the warrant again later and decide how much is enough to show a pattern. For now, the pattern lives on paper, in camera stamps, in receipts, and in a thermostat's idea of a touch. Torres and Ng sit with the assistant district attorney. They place quiet items on the table and speak in quiet words. They avoid adjectives. They say, manual bump at 139, elevator ride up and down, garage tailgate, vacant unit log, space heater placed, not left by occupant, solvent lid loose, paint flakes, peephole hand with blue cuff, POS server versus receipt, cleanup vendor with board relationship, prior claim behavior, and potential for double recovery via master and HO6 if loss had escalated. They do not say the word arson. They say attempted fraud, trespass, reckless endangerment. They talk in counts the paper can carry. A week later, the board meets in a small conference room. Evan argues for speed and for his vendor. Another member raises conflict of interest. Trevor sits at the end and pretends to balance costs in his head. Dana attends and says she will be fine with any contractor who will bag the heater for evidence first. Evan looks annoyed that the heater is still in a bag. He says we're dragging and this hurts everyone. The board votes to get 2 bids. Evan votes no. The cleanup begins under a vendor without his logo. The lab calls with sharper language. Trace solvent on the 7F baseboard lip matches the bottle from the bag. The flake of paint's binder matches 7F's interior paint, not 7B's, and the flake sat on 7F's carpet edge only a day by dust pattern. The heater's cord insulation shows a hot spot consistent with prolonged high load at a kink. The kink appears to be a deliberate bend. The heater's thermostat is dialed high. It is a picture of a small scene, not quite making a fire and nearly making a claim. They serve Evan with a summons for trespass, reckless endangerment, and insurance fraud in the attempted sense. They seize his phone and the smart lock programmer. His counsel calls it a misunderstanding of building governance. He walks out of the precinct with his shoulders tight. Insurance pauses the master claim pending investigation. Dana files her H06 anyway for a cleaning, and a night in a hotel because the smell stayed in her pillowcase. Her carrier asks for the police report and the vendor logs. They see the bump and the heater in a bag. They pay for the hotel and for cleaning. They reserve rights for the rest. Paid twice becomes a caution, not a conclusion. Money did not flow from both policies to one set of hands. It almost did. It will not now. Evan's property company will not hold the cleanup. The board will not write a check to a vendor it also owns. Dana will get a couch cleaning and a new heater ban posted in bigger font near the mailboxes. The building will reset. The story will sit in a filing cabinet and on a hard drive with quiet labels. Months later, the misdemeanor on trespass becomes diversion with a class on ethics and property management. The fraud count lingers. The reckless endangerment stays. Evan steps down from the board. Trevor keeps his job under new supervision. The cleanup vendor without his logo makes the hall smell like lemon for days. On a cold night in March, Dana stands in her kitchen with a mug. The thermostat holds steady at 62. It does not click. The app on her phone shows a schedule she set herself. The heater in evidence will never return to her counter. The building lights dim once and steady. Somewhere in the basement, a pump wakes and sleeps like a breath. No one bumps anything at 1:39. The cameras watch still air. The night holds straight. The story is a line of minutes that refuse to bend. A tailgated gate, a ride to 7, a gloved touch on glass, a heater turned the wrong way, a solvent lid set loose, a blue cuff and a fisheye, a convenience printer that lags when it rains, a master policy and an H06 waiting to pay. It does not need big words. It needs clocks, keys, and a screen that remembers a finger that did not belong. In the evidence room, the objects sit without sound. A bagged heater, a solvent bottle with a loose lid, a thermostat faceplate swab, a printout of a minute-by-minute strip from a power company van, a peephole still, a receipt that disagrees with a server, 2 bids from 2 vendors, and a key with a tag that says 7F. None of them carry heat anymore. They carry time, and time arranged, answers without smoke.